Hello, everyone. Welcome to our chat today. I'm so excited to share some culinary stories with you all. It's always a pleasure to connect over our love for good food and fresh ingredients. So, let me tell you about a recent cooking episode that had me a bit flustered but also sparked some creativity. I was preparing a dish for a community event. One of my favorites, a Florida-inspired stuffed squash with a zesty citrus and herb filling. This dish is special to me because it highlights the bright, fresh flavors that Florida is known for, and I was making it to celebrate the start of the harvest season at a local farmer's market. Now, squash is a staple in many of my dishes, especially in this one. It's so versatile, perfect for roasting, grilling, or stuffing. I usually use acorn or butternut squash for the sweet, nutty flavor and sturdy texture. Squash is incredibly popular here in Florida because it grows so well in our warm climate, and it's a key ingredient in many traditional southern dishes. But here's the twist. When I went to gather the ingredients, I realized there was a shortage of squash. It was a moment of panic, but it also pushed me to think outside the box. I'll get into how I managed in a bit, but that shortage was definitely a curveball. So faced with the squash shortage, I had to get creative. Instead of just substituting with another vegetable, I decided to create a whole new dish that could still honor the spirit of my original recipe. I took sweet potatoes and hollowed them out just like I would with the squash. They have a similar sweetness and can hold up well to stuffing. I then used the scooped out sweet potato to create a rich, creamy filling mixed with citrus, herbs, and a hint of spice. But I didn't stop there. To bring in that familiar squash flavor, I made a light sauce using some leftover roasted squash I had stored in the freezer, blending it with the citrus juice. It turned out to be a hit. The dish was a perfect blend of sweet and savory, with the comforting earthiness of the sweet potatoes and the bright punch of the citrus sauce. The best part? It felt like a new twist on a classic, all born from necessity.
Wow, Maya, that sounds amazing. I love how you didn't just go for a simple substitution, but instead reinvented the dish entirely. I'm curious though, what was the reaction from the people at the event? Did they notice the switch from squash to sweet potatoes?
Thanks, Sarah. The response was really positive. Most people were intrigued by the sweet potato twist, and some even asked if it was a new recipe they could try at home. It felt great to surprise everyone with something familiar yet different.
Maya, that's so innovative. Your story reminds me of how flexible we need to be in the kitchen. Did you find any challenges in working with sweet potatoes compared to squash?
Great question, Jennifer. The main challenge was making sure the sweet potatoes didn't get too soft when baking, but by carefully monitoring the cooking time, I was able to keep them just right, soft enough to enjoy, but firm enough to hold the stuffing.
That's so clever, Maya. I love how you kept the dish's essence intact. Speaking of flavors, did you notice any significant difference in taste with the sweet potatoes instead of squash?
Definitely, Emily. The sweet potatoes added a slightly richer, almost caramel-like sweetness, which actually paired beautifully with the citrus. It was different, but in a really pleasant way.
Maya, you're such an inspiration. I can just imagine how vibrant and flavorful that dish must have been. I have to ask, do you think you'll make this version again, even when squash is available?
Thanks, Chloe. I think I will. It's become a new favorite, especially for fall when sweet potatoes are at their peak. It's a great reminder that sometimes challenges can lead to even better outcomes.
I agree with you, Maya. When it comes to buying squash, I always look for firmness and weight. A squash that feels heavy for its size is a good sign of density and moisture content, which is crucial for roasting or stuffing. I typically buy squash in the fall for hearty soups or roasted sides. The dense flesh holds up well to long cooking times, giving a rich, comforting flavor. But beware of any squash that feels soft or has blemishes. Those are signs it's past its prime.
That's such a good point, Chloe. I'm with you on the importance of weight and density. Another criterion I consider is the color. I love a deep, rich color, which indicates ripeness and full flavor. Here in Washington, I often buy squash in late summer and early fall for baking. I find that the vibrant color really enhances the visual appeal of my baked goods. but I always avoid squash that looks too pale or dull. It usually means it's underripe or lacking in flavor.
I completely agree with you both. Another key aspect for me is the stem. When I'm selecting squash, I check if the stem is dry and intact. A healthy, dry stem is a sign that the squash was harvested at the right time and has been properly cured. In Texas, I use squash in stews or casseroles, where it's important for the squash to hold its shape and texture. A soft or missing stem can be a red flag for overripeness or potential rot, so it's something to watch out for.
Absolutely, Jennifer. I think what I always keep in mind is the skin. The skin should be tough and unbroken, which is a sign the squash is fresh and will have a longer shelf life. Here in California, squash is great for grilling, especially in the summer, and a good, tough skin helps it stand up to the heat without falling apart. I steer clear of any squash with cracks or soft spots because those can indicate that it's been damaged or is starting to spoil.
I love all these insights. For me, size and shape are the final touches. When I'm selecting squash, I look for a uniform shape with no irregularities. A well-shaped squash is easier to peel and cut, which is important for the kinds of dishes I prepare in my food truck, like stuffed or sliced squash. Squash that's too lopsided or misshapen can be tough to work with, and it might not cook evenly, so I always pick ones that look consistent and balanced.
Speaking of alternatives, in California, I often use zucchini when squash is out of season. Zucchini has a similar texture and mild flavor, making it a versatile substitute in grilling or stir-frying. However, zucchini tends to cook faster and has higher water content, so I usually adjust the cooking time or drain off excess liquid if needed. I have found that while zucchini is a great alternative, it doesn't have the same sweet, nutty undertones as squash.
That's a great alternative, Sarah. In Texas, I often turn to sweet potatoes. Just like you did, Maya. Sweet potatoes have that hearty, sweet flavor similar to butternut squash, and they're perfect for roasting or mashing. However, they are denser and need a bit more time to cook. While they're a fantastic alternative, I miss the slightly lighter, more delicate texture that squash brings to a dish.
I love sweet potatoes, Jennifer. Here in New York, when squash isn't available, I'd often use carrots. Carrots can bring a similar sweetness and work wonderfully in soups or roasted dishes. They're slightly firmer than squash, so they add a nice bite. However, carrots don't have the same creamy texture when pureed, which is something I miss when making a velvety squash soup.
These are all great options. In Washington, I sometimes use pumpkin as an alternative, especially in baking. Pumpkin has a rich, sweet flavor and a smooth texture, making it a great substitute for squash in pies or muffins. However, pumpkins can be a bit more fibrous, so they need to be pureed thoroughly for a smooth consistency. While pumpkin is a fantastic stand-in, it doesn't quite capture the subtle earthiness of squash.
I love how everyone brought their unique perspectives on squash and its alternatives. We've covered everything from what to look for when buying squash to how to creatively substitute when it's not available. Chloe talked about the importance of firmness and weight. Emily highlighted the significance of color. Jennifer shared the insight on checking the stem, and Sarah emphasized the role of the skin. Then we explore alternatives, with Sarah mentioning zucchini, Jennifer and I sharing our love for sweet potatoes, Chloe suggesting carrots, and Emily pointing out pumpkin. Thank you all for such a thoughtful and engaging conversation. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to chat about food, and I hope you found our discussion as enjoyable and informative as I did. Until next time, keep cooking with love and creativity. See you soon!